What's up, third graders? Hope everyone's doing well. Hey, what's up? That's actually figurative language, isn't it? Think about it. All right, so anyway, this week we are looking at the spelling vocabulary list number 23. We're going to look at contractions and possessive pronouns. Whenever you start a unit like this at home, try and have some paper and pencil handy, or if you have a little whiteboard and marker, just something to work along with the words. Okay, sorry about that little tech blip there. I appreciate your patience. All right, so first let's just take a look at the complete spelling list. Okay, so repeat after me. We have it's, your, there, there. It's, whose, contraction, whose. All right, now stop and think. What do you notice about many of the words that we just said together? There are a few that sound the same, but they're not spelled the same, and you're going to see or already understand that they don't mean the same thing when they're used. Okay, so what exactly is a contraction? First, let's take the word apart. And you've been learning a lot about word parts in spelling this year. So con means together. Tract means pull. So pull together. So a contraction is where we're going to pull two words together, and we pull them so tight that one or more letters erupt and they leave only a little piece to make one word now. And that little piece that's left, once they take some letters away, is called an apostrophe. And it looks like this guy right here. Okay, so ultimately a contraction. And look, it ends in T-I-O-N. Now, we had learned, I believe it was last week or the week before, that when you add shun to a word, it makes it a noun. So a contraction is a word. That's a noun. But now if we take that shun off, we have contract, which means to pull together. When things contract, the opposite of contract would be, think about it, if we don't pull together, we pull apart, right? So that would be expand. So in a contraction, again, we're putting two words together. Now, what I notice with contractions, a lot of times when we read contractions, and not just kids, adults too, we actually read the contraction as the two words that make it up. I find it very interesting. So we're not really changing the meaning, are we? All right, so let's take a look at some contractions that are on your list. We have your, which is made up of you are. So whenever I'm doing the writing, and I want to make sure I have the correct your, if you cannot put you are in place of this contraction, well, then we have the wrong use of your. Keep that in mind. Next one is there, which is made up of they are. All right, so let's take a look so far of what's missing. Remember, when it's put together and it erupts and it can't take it anymore and it's got to get rid of some of the letters. So we have Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. The apostrophe is taking the place of which letter or letters that have been taken out. So U is complete. R, well, we're missing A. So the apostrophe is taking the place for the A. Let's look at there. We have they, and then for R, we have just the apostrophe. The A is missing. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. It's, which is it is. The only letter that is missing, that's right, is the I from is. Whose, who is. Who's reading at home today? Who is reading at home today? So you see the meaning doesn't change, and that's what helps our brains to understand which one we should be using. Now, the other words on your list consist of what's a possessive pronoun. Let's think, first of all, what's possessive mean? When you possess something, that means you own it. So possessive shows ownership. And there are other possessive nouns that you already make in your writing, read, and if you're not aware, well, you will learn about those in more detail in the future. But right now we're going to look at possessive pronouns. What's a pronoun? Well, a pronoun is a word that takes the place of another noun. So like maybe if we're talking about Sally in a story, well, I don't have to keep saying Sally's name over and over again. Okay, so it just helps to vary our writing. And again, possessive show ownership. So they tell you who or what the words after it belong to. Let's take a look at some examples. Possessive pronouns. We have its, I-T-S. Remember, no apostrophes because these are pronouns. These are not contractions. Your. You know, and a lot of times I notice when kids in early writing sometimes want to throw apostrophes when we are making plurals. So remember, we're doing apostrophes when we make contractions and in the future when you learn about other possessives. But right now in our pronouns, again, we have its, your, their. Okay, again, this is possessive showing ownership. There's an I in this there. Okay, so this is a common mistake, believe it or not, that a lot of people make, adults make it in their writing. This is a time when you have to stop and think, which there do I need? It's their classroom. So I want the EIR, I, showing ownership, possessive. And the other one we have is whose. Whose book is that? So remember, we had the whose contraction, who is. I wouldn't say, whose book is that? No. So that's how sometimes, again, stop, think about which word makes the most sense. So we're going to take a look at some sentence examples of possessive pronouns. Whose jacket is this? So we have just whose, not who is, the contraction whose. The contraction whose, remember, stands for who is. And that is not grammatically correct. That's not how we speak. So we need just whose the word, no contraction. We have ownership. And remember, the whose is a pronoun, taking the place of another noun. Well, whose jacket is this? I don't know. Is it Shonda's? Is it Lucy's? Is it Ty's? Is it Bryce's? Is it Owen's? I don't know. Its collar has a name on it. Its is your possessive pronoun, showing ownership to the collar. Their house is near school. Whose house? Their house. Again, showing ownership between the house and their. And again, because this is showing ownership, you want the there that has the I in it. Okay, showing the possessive and ownership. That's how I used to remember it when I used to get my theirs mixed up when I was first learning them. You sometimes have to create little tricks like that to help your brain. Now, before we move on to the vocabulary, you should take a minute to reflect, take a minute to look back at what you just did with the spelling. So remember, your spelling list is made up of contractions and possessive pronouns. Okay, so let's take a look at the vocabulary for this week. Read with me. Erupt, disrupt, interrupt, population, scenic, abrupt, ruptured. Makes me think of something. What do you think about when you hear many of these words? I bet you a lot of us are thinking of the same theme. Okay, now I want you to stop and take a minute to maybe jot down either a quick picture or some quick words that help what you think these words might mean. Okay, I hope you took a minute to think about what you understand these words might mean. Now let's talk about RUPT. If you look at all these words, we have RUPT, except for population and scenic. Excuse me. My allergies are extremely bad these past couple of weeks, so excuse me, boys and girls. All right, so RUPT, it means to break, burst, So let's think of how a volcano, because that's what I was thinking about when I first read this list of words, and I bet many of you were thinking of volcanoes too. Um, how a volcano can sort of help us to always remember what RUPT means in the break and burst apart. Because when a volcano erupts, lava, steam, and ash breaks through the ground and bursts out into the air. Okay, so we think about that. So think about what erupts. We know volcanoes erupt. A stadium can erupt with cheer and noise from the fans. Your teacher might erupt from all the nonsense going on in the classroom. All right, so we have a couple of meanings for erupt. Disrupt. If the class was having quiet work time and then 3 students came bursting in loudly talking and laughing, that would disrupt or break up what we are doing. If you disrupt, you break up what is supposed to be going on. Let's talk about some things that would disrupt a classroom of students. If you think it would disrupt, say disrupt. Okay, so in your mind, kind of think about when I give a sort of a situation. If you think, then respond in your mind with disrupt. Okay, so we're taking a test and someone calls out, my pencil broke. Or we have another situation where everyone was in their groups, everybody's working, and someone walks over and throws an eraser in the middle of the group. Let's see. So far, would you say disrupt? I'd have to say you're right. Those are disruptive behaviors. Absolutely. Let's talk about interrupt. Interrupt. Now, 3M kids might get a little connection with this one because many times when you'd come over to me and I was in the middle of speaking with someone and you would start speaking and interrupting, I would sometimes call you Volcano Mouth, right? Because we enjoyed that story in the beginning of the year. So it sort of became a fun thing that we would just say to each other to remind each other that we shouldn't interrupt. Because I'm sure many of you have been told by adults before that you shouldn't interrupt. So remember, RUPT, rupt, means to break. Inter means between. So interrupt means you're going to break between. See, words like the word parts and break them apart, it's like puzzles. It's like little puzzles that come together. All right, next we have population. Population means the total number of living things in a place. You could say, how many bears live in our state? Or what is the population of bears in the state? Or there are how many residents that live in Statesville? Well, ultimately that means what is the population of Statesville? And then we have the word scenic. When we see a place is scenic, we usually talk about natural scenes, like outdoors, the mountains, the oceans, deserts, lakes, fields, you name it, because they have all kinds of interesting plants and dunes. We mean this usually in a pleasant way. It's something special and pleasant to look at. Maybe some of you can think about places that you think are scenic. Maybe that you've actually experienced in your own life and you've gone out and seen these scenic beauties of wonder. Or maybe it's something you enjoyed in a movie. So I'm also thinking you think of the opposite. Unfortunately, we also have some things that we see that aren't very scenic, correct? Okay, so now we're going to see if we understand what our vocabulary words mean.